Welcome to the Fantasy Fling DFS channel.
Fantasy Fling with your UFL Week 1 DraftKings first look. All right, so we're going to look at the Vegas lines, and obviously this is Week 1 UFL. For those of you who don't know, the United Football League is a merger of the USFL and the XFL. So both of these spring leagues merged, and now we have one league. So we're going to have a lot more talented players. Very exciting. It's not a complete merger. A lot of these players went to the NFL or, the CFL, or they retired, but we still have a lot of talented players between the two leagues. It should be a great year. So we're going to start off with the Vegas lines and kind of get a good idea of, what the totals are. Now you see across the board, the totals are pretty similar. So what I like about that is you don't have one game that really stands out, like a 48-point total, with these others being the low 40s where we know it's going to be chalky. I think it's going to be pretty spread out for Week 1. Specifically, there's going to be a lot of spots of leverage because some of these coaches have not named starting quarterbacks. Depth charts are only going to be announced 48 hours before the first game. So this should be dropping today. But, in a lot of ways, we're just guessing. And we're going to make educated guesses based on just following the news of the league and what we saw last year in both of these spring leagues. So Birmingham Stallions and Arlington Renegades. Birmingham Stallions, they won the USFL championship last year. They went back-to-back. And the Arlington Renegades, they won the XFL championship last year. They actually upset the DC Defenders. So we're going to see these teams square off Saturday, the first game. And Birmingham is favored by 3.5 points. Now, Birmingham, they lost a lot of pieces, but they have really revamped their entire roster. So they lost Alice Magoo, who's just a USFL GOAT. They lost him to the Green Bay Packers. But they got Jamar Smith, who's been on the roster a while and just had injuries. They signed Matt Corral. So it's going to be interesting. Overall, their team is still stacked. They brought back their starting running back, the USFL Championship MVP last year, and Deion Kane. And really, they revamped both their defense on the defensive line and linebacker. So it's pretty crazy because they really have changed their roster over quite a bit and somehow on paper look better. Well, they're going against Arlington Renegades, who have added a significant amount as well. So they bring back Luis Perez, who they traded for late last year, and they were able to go on a run and upset the DC Defenders and win that championship. They brought back Devion Smith and Aleti Brown, so they have two really good running backs. They got a really good wide receiver core. In fact, I think, let's take a look here. I think they added Deontay Burnett to pair with what they already had at wide receiver. So they had Javonte Payton, Winningham, and Vaughn. So they're going to be stacked again at wide receiver. This should be a good game. I like Birmingham here. St. Louis Battlehawks. So St. Louis Battlehawks, they will be my favorite to win the UFL. Sorry, they're from the XFL. They'll be my favorite to win the championship. They got AJ McCarron back. They were already loaded at wide receiver last year with Hakeem Butler and Darius Shepard and Marcel Aitman. Well, now they got Jakar Pearson, who's hurt, but he's expected back rather shortly, and Blake Jackson from the Seattle Sea Dragons. So they're looking really good. They got Wayne Gallman from the NFL, and they really have upped their defense. So that was the biggest problem last year. They could put up a ton of points, but when they went against good teams, well, the good teams scored a lot of points on them. That should be too much of a problem this year. They really beefed up their defense, so you could see why they're heavy favorites Week 1. And I certainly expect them to win. We will be looking to target AJ McCarron stacks all year long. Now, we also have the DC Defenders and the San Antonio Brahmas. So DC, they are a team that had a lot of turnover. And unfortunately, they lost Lucky Blair to the NFL. or Lucky Jackson. They lost Chris Blair, and Aaron Smith tore his ACL. He was the league leading rusher for the XFL last year. Well, luckily, they will be bringing Tamu back, and Cameron Harris looked good for them at the end of the year running the ball. He's expected to start, and we should get some Darius Higgins in certain situations, and Puka Williams is kind of going to be more of the third down back. But they do have some wide receivers we'll be looking to watch. Brandon Smith, he has current chemistry with Jordan Tamu. Calvin Harmon is a big target, so we'll see how he fits into the offense. And the offensive line is kind of the one question mark. They are getting a lot of new starters, so that concerns me a little bit. We'll see. Will Tamu have to, run off? He's very athletic and obviously a dual threat quarterback. Will he need to just leave the pocket a lot because protection isn't there? That's something we'll definitely have to keep an eye on. They are returning 28 players last year from a team that was favored to win the championship and was very close to winning it. So we expect DC to be good again this year. The Brahmas, I think they are going to be arguably the most improved team this year. They got Wade Phillips. First off, they were 3-7 last year. They got Wade Phillips. We know he plays defense. They got a new starting quarterback. They're loaded at wide receiver. They got John Ray Kirkland back, who was basically the number one wide receiver in the XFL last year before he hurt himself. And they are bringing back several other playmakers. They got Cody Latimer, who is he's a tight end, but he's basically a wide receiver, and he crushed it last year. So love what the Brahmas did this past offseason and expect them to be really good. They also added Anthony McFarland from the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy runs a 4.40. He's kind of buried on the Steelers depth chart, but did very well every chance he got. Last, we got Memphis Showboats and Houston Roughnecks. So Memphis is a team I really like this year. They are 1-point dogs. I like this +1. I like them to win this game. I also like the Brahmas, by the way, to cover the 6 points in their game against DC. So those are 2 bets I'll be making. Memphis Showboats, they added Cookus, who was really good. That was really Memphis' problem last year. They had a good team. They just didn't really have a great quarterback. Well, they added Cookus, who's been good for Philly. He's one of the better spring football quarterbacks. And, they have several playmakers on offense. And I just think it's going to be a really good fit as we'll get into some of their wide receivers that they have. Lead the way, Jonathan Adams. They brought over a lot of players from New Orleans. So really like what Memphis was able to do. And I think they are certainly going to be one of the better teams in the UFL. So let's go ahead and jump right into the salaries for this first look, and a little bit of a longer first look than normal because I just kind of wanted to. Not everyone knows about the UFL, so just kind of wanted to preview the teams and the game lines a little bit. So we got starting it out at quarterback. So it's going to be a little tricky week 1. I'll say that right now, because we have a lot of coaches who basically have not named starting quarterbacks. Little gamesmanship. They, think that, they're going to have an edge by not naming a starting quarterback. And we have some new faces as well. So we don't necessarily know what to expect from these guys on a new team, in a new system. So what are we going to get week 1? Well, I tell you what I'm going to do week 1. I'm pretty much just going to play the studs. I am going to – there's a couple spots that I would look to target as some GPP plays. But A.J. McCarron, 11,000. I think you certainly need to be willing to pay up for A.J. McCarron this week. I think you can – I'll just say this. Like, for example, guys like Wes Hills and Mark Thompson, these guys were like $13K, as we're going to see when we get into the running backs. These guys were like $13K last year towards the end of the year. And they're going to rise, but they're affordable now. So I think you could play those guys now with like an AJ McCarron while they're still affordable. Later on, as the season goes on, then you're going to have to find, so if you want to play West Hills, you're going to have to find a Luis Perez at like 9K to be able to pair with him. So right now, I think it's easy to build. I tried to build earlier, was able to get a lot of studs in. So I'm going AJ McCarron this week. I will have a lot of him with his pass catching options. He's not, a big runner, so it's very easy to double stack. Hakeem Butler and Marcel Aitman. It stacks pretty well. So Jordan Ta'amu, he's the other guy that we know is going to be the starter, and he's a dual threat quarterback. He's kind of a QB plus one guy. I don't really think you need to double stack him, but he's 10-3. And then we got Case Cookus, and Luis Perez. So these are the guys that we pretty much know are going to start. Luis Perez has been named the starter. Chase Garbers has been named the starter, but we don't know a whole lot about him. He comes from the NFL, a little bit the Raiders. But as far as guys that we've seen in spring action before, Luis Perez, Case Cookus, Jordan Ta'amu, and AJ McCarron. So we're going to go into DK points per game real quick. But just know Ta'amu is a dual threat quarterback. Case Cookus, now Memphis has not officially announced a starter. DeFilippo didn't want to announce a starter, but we know it's going to be Cookus because he's by far their best option. Does not mean that they won't pull Troy Williams in the game, who's a running threat, and have some different looks. And could that cap the ceiling of Cookus? Absolutely. If they pull Troy Williams in and he runs one in, that's kind of worst case scenario if you're paying up for Case Cookus. But Cookus was named the captain. We know he's going to be the starter, despite the coach not wanting to name him as such. And he's the guy that I really like against Houston. Let me tell you why. Houston has a new coach. So the Houston defense, you remember last year, kind of need to throw that out because they merged with the Showboats. They also lost Wade Phillips. He was the coach of the Houston Roughnecks last year. He went over to San Antonio. So they're very much a question mark right now. And apparently their new coach has been pissed off at their performance in the secondary camp. So I like Cookus week 1. I will have a good amount of him and AJ McCarron. Now, some of the cheaper guys that you can target, Garbers has been named the starter. So I think he's a guy like a GPP play that I would be safe playing him because we just talked about Jontre Kirkland. We have Cody Latimer. He's got some good stacking options, and he's only 8,500. So I'm a fan of being able to play him. And then Luis Perez. In fact, let's get into just kind of some of the overall stats of some of these guys last year. So Luis Perez, kind of the definition of mediocrity, got traded to Arlington late, played good at the end. He was very much a guy who would have 20 points or, he'd have like 7. So he's a GPP play for sure. As you can see, he averaged 10 points on the year. And these were all games where, he had significant amount of attempts. Now, clearly the top guy was AJ McCarron. Jordan Ta'amu, like I said, Ta'amu brings that rushing threat. As you can see, 250 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. He really ran a lot during the year. Didn't throw much at the beginning of the year and then turned it on late. And, he had a great touchdown-interception ratio. So McCarron and Ta'amu, clearly the top 2 pay-up guys. With Cookus being right behind them, love him. He runs a little bit too, very athletic. Doesn't run near the goal line, but he will take off and run when protection breaks down and there's a wide open lane. He's got some GPP appeal as well. So 16.8 DK points per game. And, that's pretty much it, I think, for the quarterbacks that I'll be looking to play. Birmingham, they have not announced yet whether it's going to be Matt Corral or Jamar Smith. So kind of avoided that. EJ Perry is another guy that could potentially get the start, but that hasn't been announced yet because they had it. He played well for Michigan after they signed him late last year, but they also added Danny Etling. So if you want to take a chance, if we hear between now and game time that Etling is going to get the start, he was on Green Bay's roster, kind of got beat out in camp by Alex Magoo, USFL GOAT. So, he was cut and made his way to Michigan, and he could definitely shine. So we'll see if he gets a start at 7,800 would be a good price. We're going to go to running back, and where we're at with running back, it's a little tricky week one. So Wes Hills is clearly the top pay-up guy. Wes Hills crushed it last year. And then there's Mark Thompson. So Mark Thompson was actually, look at the stats here. He was the number one XFL or USFL, running back last year. Wes Hills was just behind him. So these guys crushed it. Wes Hills, you'll see, had a lot more attempts and, just a little bit more yards than Mark Thompson. So, yeah, Wes Hills had a really good start. It was almost like he got ran down during the course of the season. Like he just got too many carries and got ran down. So he started to slow down. And Thompson was just good all year. You can see he also played one less game than him. Thompson at 81 yards per game. Wes Hill 67. Thompson 14 touchdowns. Wes Hill did a lot of receiving work, but overall Thompson was just a little bit more effective with 22 DK points per game versus Wes Hill was at about 20. The big thing though with Thompson is he has a knee injury. He's probably not going to play week one. So if he doesn't, I would like TJ Pledger here at 7,700. He was pretty good last year early on before Thompson took over. And, Wes Hills will be the top pay-up option, of course. And one thing I like about Wes Hills is they are, big dogs against St. Louis. But because of that receiving game work, he's not going to be phased out of the game completely if they're losing that game. So he is the top pay-up option. I would expect him to be chalked, especially with Thompson out. A couple guys that, I would target. Wayne Gallman. He's just a guy you want to target because there's a favorite team, right? 6.5 point favorites. You typically want to target running backs on favorite teams. He's 8,500. Now, he didn't play much in the NFL the past couple of years. In fact, he didn't play at all in 2023. I'm guessing it was injury. Seemed like a practice squad guy in 2022. So really hasn't played since 2021. But it is UFL. So, who knows how he's going to do. I'll have some of him. I won't get crazy. Darius Victor. I like Victor. He was one of the top guys in the USFL. But the attempts, he's averaging about 10 attempts a game, so it's not a ton. However, he's getting receiving work, and he tends to be a guy that's not doing much, and then he takes a screen 50 yards to the house for a touchdown. So pretty decent, average 13.5 DK points. You could do a lot worse. He's very effective with the ball in his hand, but just the carries aren't quite there. As you can see, 5.5 points or 5.5 yards per carry. If he gets the bulk of the work, he'll be a great play. And it's going against a Houston team that does have a lot of questions right now. Couple guys that I really like. Devion Smith, he was great last year, and Anthony McFarland. Now, McFarland came from the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy runs a 4.40, kind of buried on the depth chart, but every chance he got with the Steelers, he did well. So they got a new starting quarterback. I think it would make sense to run the ball. Wade Phillips likes to play defense and run the ball. So I could totally see playing McFarland here. Devion Smith, he was a guy who was pretty good last year in the UFL or XFL. And he actually, let's look at his stats. He was second overall in rushing yards. He also gets receiving work. So, he averaged 11 DK points per game. Gets in the end zone, 7 touchdowns on the ground. So Devion Smith is a guy I'll definitely be looking to play. Outside of that, it's, like I said, if Thompson's out, love Pledger. CJ Marable, we like calling him Marbles at DFS Army. And he was the starter last year, did well, running, receiving, and he's back again this year for Birmingham. Without Alex Magoo, I'd expect them to continue to lean on the run a little bit. Magoo was a beast, and he ran himself. He threw a lot of touchdowns. So Marble is a guy I expect to get a little bit more work than if Magoo was still in the offense. Now, a couple other guys here, and it's kind of a gamble. Like, for example, Abram Smith out. We think Cameron Harris is going to shoulder the load. He did nothing all year and then scored 2 touchdowns in the championship game. So he gets the first crack at it. But Higgins and Puka Williams, Higgins is a guy that's going to be situational. Most likely, that's how it's projected. Puka Williams is going to be the third down back. But in large field GPPs, because this isn't so certain, I would definitely take some chances on guys like Higgins and Puka Williams. And the DraftKings 50K to first, which is kind of what I'm building for here. Those are some guys you can take some chances on for sure. And other than that, I'm not going to get too crazy at running back. I will take some chances on some of these situations where we're not entirely sure. We got all new backs. Who's going to be the starter? Play the second string guy a little bit in some large field GPPs, specifically if we know they're getting receiving work, like a guy like John Levitt, who did almost all of his work in the receiving game, as you'll see last year, 268 yards and 2 touchdowns. So more receiving yards than rushing yards. So that's a guy I would take a chance on. Now, one of the great things that I like about the UFL, the spring football leagues on DraftKings, you're not required to start a tight end. So that's good because it can be crappy. We'll go through the good tight ends, of course, but you're not required to start a tight end. So I think it's wide receiver tight end, which is pretty sweet. Now, Hakeem Butler, Hakeem Butler was the top guy in the XFL last year. And what we like about Hakeem Butler is he has definitely the best quarterback on his team. So wide receiver is a very dependent position. Well, he's A.J. McCarron. He spent time with the Bengals. He was from Alabama. He was highly regarded. A.J. McCarron is in the UFL because he loves the game of football. He could be on an NFL roster. He asked to be released to play in the UFL. That's how good A.J. McCarron is. So Hakeem Butler, 8,600. I love him in this spot. He had 400 yards last year, 42 receptions, 6 touchdowns. He averaged 17 DK points per game. Kiki Kuti is a guy that can never really, stick to an NFL roster, have an impact, even though, scouts really loved him. But he's a guy I think you could take a chance or two on having a good game. I think he could potentially have a good year. They lost Lucky Jackson and Chris Blair. So there's some holes to fill in that passing game. There's some opportunity there. Wouldn't mind that. Jonte Kirkland. So he only played 4 games last year, but in the 4 games, he was arguably the best wide receiver in the league. 15 DraftKings points. He was averaging 62 yards a game. He had 4 touchdowns. So love him. Jonathan Adams. These are obviously your high-end guys. Jonathan Adams is going to be he came over from New Orleans, and he did pretty well in New Orleans. So let's go ahead and look at what his stats were there. Yeah, so he was very much a big play guy. He wasn't targeted a ton, 40 receptions across 10 games, about, 4 receptions a game, but he was a big play guy. So he had multiple big touchdowns, almost 500 yards. He's definitely a GPP play. I wouldn't probably play him as like a core guy, but he's a high ceiling GPP type of play. Now, Amari Rodgers comes over for Birmingham, which they lost some of their wide receivers, but Amari Rodgers comes over from the Green Bay Packers. This guy was a 3rd-round pick. He could potentially do pretty well for Birmingham. He would be more of a GPP play for me. Wouldn't have a ton of exposure to him. Who knows what he's going to be like in a new offense with a new quarterback, but he's a guy I think could have a good year. Justin Hall. Justin Hall was one of the better players in the USFL last year. He had 47 receptions, 500 yards, plus 4 touchdowns, averaged 10 DK points per game. So I would like Justin Hall here. Blake Jackson would be a guy. He's a little overpriced, I think he averaged like 5 points a game. Just a little overpriced for me, but in AJ McCarron's stacks only, he's a guy that would certainly play. Now, Burnett did pretty well last year with Houston. He's a guy, I would more so play in Luis Perez, Arlington stacks. There's some stack only guys, the Blake Jackson, the Deontay Burnett. The core guys I'm going to be looking for are guys like Cody Latimer, Hakeem Butler, Jonte Kirkland. I would be okay playing these guys because they just got so much volume and their upside was so high. So Cody Latimer is one of those guys. I remember him as a Broncos fan because he was supposed to be a beast, and everyone loved him, and he just didn't handle Peyton Manning yelling at him very well. But let's see. Actually, I haven't listed as wide receiver, but he came into spring football and he was fantastic last year. So 47 receptions, 558 yards, 4 touchdowns. He averaged 13 DK points per game. And he's with Wade Phillips, and he's cheaper, 7,000 for him. So the Garber stacks I was talking about with Latimer and Kirkland, that's definitely a double stack that I like. Darius Shepard is a guy that I think I will have a lot of this weekend. Just with him and AJ McCarron, like he's a guy who averages pretty good DK points per game, especially for his price. Trying to look up Shepard right now. There he is. Yeah, he had 420 yards, 42 receptions, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, he's very underpriced at 14 DK points per game. So Darius Shepard is a guy we'll have a lot of. Now, one thing to note, when Pearson comes back, that might cut into his production a little bit. So play him now while you can. I love him. Yeah, Pearson's been ruled out. And then, let's kind of go for, some of these guys under 5K that you want to target. Now, Sternberger, Surratt, these are, a couple 6K guys that I would really be looking to target. They were 2 of the better tight ends in the USFL last year. Sternberger I'm going to have a ton of him. He had 17 DK points per game average, 7 touchdowns, 500 yards. He was great. Surratt was really good as well, 11 DK points per game. So, but Sternberger's really underpriced. I think, he's going to be a core play for me. Deion Kane, USFL MVP for the championship last year. Love him. He's a guy that's had, not a ton of receptions, but a lot of touchdowns. So he's a guy at the goal line in the red zone that they look to when they're calling passing plays. So 4 touchdowns, 158 yards. And, I don't believe he played the full year as well, but he averaged almost 9 DK points per game. So pretty good price for him at 5,900. Sewell, he did a lot in 2022 and got hurt early in 2023. So he's priced down, but this is a guy that we could see above 7K by the end of the year for sure. Aitman's that guy I talked about. I like him in AJ McCarron stacks, and Canella, 5,500. He's been a really good XFL tight end. In fact, he averaged, as far as just XFL tight ends, he was number 1 last year. Averaged, if we count out Latimer, he averaged 8.5 DK points per game. Devin Gray, this is really cheap for him. Devin Gray was a guy that he averaged over 11 DK points per game. So I love him at 5,300. I think he's very underpriced. In fact, we're going to start lineup building here. Before I forget some of these guys, let's start putting these guys in here. And of course, we are at the flex spot. Devin Gray, like I said, he's definitely 5,300. That is way too cheap for him. Whittingham, he had a good year last year. He would be a guy that he made a lot of contested catches last year. He just seemed to catch everything. So he would be a guy that I think would be worth a flyer on at 4,400. Javonte Payton, same thing for Arlington. So at 4,500, Javonte Payton had quite a good year last year. And is there anyone else in this range that I would be really comfortable playing week one? If you want to punt on tight end, Cole Hikutini, pretty good last year. He averaged 8.3 DK points per game. He got 5 touchdowns, so he was very much a red zone target. So he's a guy I think at 3,800, if you need a punt, would be absolutely fantastic. For defense, for me this week, there's a couple ways you can go. If you're paying up, I would do Battlehawks. That's probably where I would go. Big favorites. Going to be, rushing the quarterback a lot, is the other team's going to be in, obvious passing situations, trailing from behind. That's at least how Vegas has it projected. So I would go then. The team I like, though, the Brahmas. Wade Phillips D. They've completely revamped that team. Wade Phillips brought over a lot of his guys. I think they're underpriced at 3,800. I think they'll be one of the better defenses in the league. Going to play them now while I can. Let's see what we can get here at, running back, at wide receiver. So can we get in Hakeem Butler? This would be a Butler Shepard double stack. So we have remaining salary of 14,000. Let's see if we can get in Wes Hills in one of these punt guys that I really liked. No, we don't want Wes Hills in the flex when I'm running back. Totally see playing like a Javonte Payton. Another thing you could do, I like that lineup. I would say another thing you could do is you could come down off of Wes Hills, who's 8,900. Maybe you do Marble, who is really good as well, or you could do McFarland, which I don't hate McFarland because I think that actually would correlate well with your defense. So, you got the running back in the defense there. That's a good correlation. And then what do we got? We got 6K. What do we get for 6K? Oh, there we go. Sage Surratt. So, yeah, I really like that lineup. We got Rat, Sternberger, 2 tight ends. But in this league, these are really good receiving tight ends. It's like playing Laporta and Kelsey, basically. AJ McCarron, double stack with Shepard and Butler. McFarland, Surratt, I like it. I'll go ahead and put this in the large fill GPP, the 50K to first. I guess I'll have to log in, so we'll do that later. So want to show you guys real quick. I'm going to be, I do NFL content for DFS Army, and I will be doing UFL content for DFS Army all year long. So if you are a DFS Army subscriber, you have access to UFL. We don't charge any extra for this. This will be my cheat sheet that I'll be working on. It's under the CFL UFL tab. We'll have a cheat sheet all season long for you by yours truly. If you're an NFL subscriber, this is something you have access to. Or if you have a Core 4 membership, the Big 4 sports, the UFL is included in that. If you guys are not DFS Army subscribers, I'm going to put the free offer in the video if you want to try free for a month. there's a free offer. You can sign up for any of these sites: Prize Pick, Sleeper, Owner's Box, Underdog, PointsBet, and use code DFS Army. And that will get you access to a free month of DFS Army. So you could try UFL and all these other sports we offer: NBA, MLB, NHL, NASCAR, PGA, MMA. We even do esports. We have it all. Baseball starting today, or maybe it started yesterday. I don't remember. I think it starts today. Nonetheless, you get access to this. If you have signed up for all these sites, you don't want to do the free offer, use code FANTASYFLING. That'll get you 10% off a VIP subscription. Like I said, I will be doing this content all season long, UFL for DFS Army. So see you on the next episode. Best of luck.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next episode right here on the Fantasy